Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RTD News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, Venezuela turns to Russia to counter USA. I'm going to share with you 3 articles I came across dealing with last week's meeting with Maduro and Vladimir Putin in Russia and some of the possible dealings that will follow in the days ahead as the whole Trump administration continues to put pressure on Maduro and what's happening down in Venezuela, and possibly how Russia may get involved if things get out of hand. So, as always, before I dive into today's articles, I want to encourage you to click the subscribe button for more RTD News updates, as well as interviews. And as well, if you're new to Rethinking the Dollar, I want to encourage you to visit the RTD University site, where I have put together all my prior interviews that will begin helping you to think beyond the dollar in today's monetary world. So, without further ado, let's dive into today's news. So today, as I mentioned, I have 3 articles dealing with the recent meeting in Moscow, as well as some of the possible things that will, transpire in the future, dealing with the Russian ruble that Maduro is holding his hand right here, being that one of the main premises behind de-dollarizing or Maduro shifting away from the dollar was the formulating of a basket of currencies, which of course included the yuan, but also included the Russian ruble as a means of trading and selling their oil. And so it looks like, because of these recent transactions or these recent meetings, they might be looking to really speed up the need for having rubles in their reserves as well, in order to continue to fund things and to keep things afloat. And in one of the articles, there's mentioned that there could be a possible debt forgiveness by China and Russia on behalf of helping Maduro kind of solve things in his own country. So we'll see how that turns out. But other than that, it's interesting to see how since a month ago President Trump came out mentioning how it's important to begin helping restore democracy and helping free the people that's starving in Venezuela and all that good pre-war talk. How since then Maduro feels that he's very confident that if things really escalated, that Russia would probably come to his aid, being that a lot of the war material he has is all Russian made, tanks and aircraft and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see how things pan out in the days ahead now that Russia may possibly be in the mix as a possible aid to Venezuela. So let's dive into today's article. As always, I encourage you to read some of these for yourself to get a better understanding on what's happening regarding the dollar, as well as all these geopolitical events. So let's get into today's article. The very first one here is from the Sydney Morning Herald, and it says Venezuela turns to Russia for help to counter U.S. So as always, I highlighted a few things here just to share with you. And other than that, if you want to read some more, feel free to do so. It says Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro has raised possibility of getting military support from Russia to boost crisis-torn countries' defensive capabilities in light of a spat with the United States. It says, this is quoted as Maduro, it says, "I am sure even if we do not ask, we will be given even more support to boost Venezuela's defense capacity and sovereignty," he said. Scroll down a little bit more. It says Venezuela already has one of the largest stockpiles of Russian arms, including tanks and thousands of surface-to-air weapons. And then it says Maduro, who met with Venezuela or President Maduro or Putin earlier in the week, said a threat from the U.S. must be taken seriously. He accused Trump of trying to bully Venezuela and the world, noting that Venezuela has no weapons of mass destruction, no nuclear arms, no military bases in other countries. So it's interesting how, hitting at the fact that, Venezuela is not even a threat to anyone, but yet President Trump feels it's very important that he, himself or the United States of America comes in to help the Venezuelan situation. So, and he's not even a threat, according to Maduro. Then scroll down. What I think was really interesting is how Maduro, of course, according to this quote here, but a lot of other leaders may have shifted their viewpoint on the United States as a whole in regards to this quote here. It says, confident in Russian aid in the face of more threats from Washington, Maduro thanked Moscow for his help and spoke of the respect and mutual admiration between former President Hugo Chavez and Putin that has continued today. Then it says Maduro thanked Putin publicly for his ongoing support and called him the true leader of the world. It says Putin is the leader, quote Maduro, Putin is the leader of the emerging world, the world we want to live in. Putin carries the banner of decorum, dignity, and peace. And so it's interesting how Maduro, who just shared his viewpoint on who the new world power may be or who will be a part of it, and saying that Putin has stepped up as a banner of decorum, dignity, and peace. And then, you think about all the things that Russia has helped nullify, such as the whole Crimea incident with Ukraine, how he stood his ground on allowing the referendum to take place in Crimea, and then the whole situation with Syria, how he's backed the regime of Assad. So it's interesting to see how he's viewed as the free leader of the world, of the free world, or whatnot. So interesting thoughts there. If you're interested, you can feel free to read more for yourself. The very next article here is from Telesur. It says Venezuela's Maduro is honored by attacks from the head of empire, Trump, head of empire. Give you an idea what's going on here. It says a whole new world is opening up for Venezuela thanks to Trump's sanctions, quoted by Maduro. It says it's an honor that the head of the empire mentions me every day, the Venezuelan president who just returned from his trip from Russia, Belarus, and Turkey. He has made me famous around the world. Every time he mentions me, they love me more. Not sure who he's referring to, who loves him more. It says a whole new world is opened up for Venezuela thanks to Trump, referring to the U.S. imposed sanctions that seek to topple Venezuela's socialist government. Then it scrolled down a little bit more. It talks about how this whole idea of it helping Venezuela is basically helping them de-dollarize and get away from the dollar a lot faster because of the fact that they have all those sanctions placed upon Venezuela. Now they're forced to do business with China and Russia at greater heights now because, the dollar reserves is not what they used to be. So it's going to be interesting to see how his viewpoint on how these sanctions have helped him play out, because it appears to help him because it allows him to diversify his foreign reserve holdings. But on the other end, here in the United States, it kind of hurts us because that's one more nail in the petrodollar coffin that we don't need here in this country, because of all those dollars is out there floating around. Will return back home to roost where they were created. So that won't be good for us here. But, apparently Maduro thinks it helps him out here. Then the very last article here says Venezuela and Russia team up to tackle the petrodollar. And so here it shows a picture of Mr. Putin in deep thought. And to give you an idea what's going on here, it says 3 weeks after the U.S. imposed financial sanctions on Venezuela in an effort to cripple its economy and choke Maduro regime, which in turn prompted Caracas to announce it will no longer receive or send payments in dollars. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro proposed to expand his own personal blockade of the U.S. by proposing that all oil-producing countries discuss creating a currency basket of trade for crude and products, one which is no longer reliant upon the petrodollar. And it says, quoted by RT, Maduro also blamed trade in crude oil paper futures as having an adverse impact on the oil market. It says to counteract this speculation, Maduro proposed an alternative currency basket, one which is not based on the world's reserve currency, but includes the yuan, and then second, the ruble, and others. So this goes back to my original thought of how a part of the sanctions, Maduro said it's kind of turned out to be a blessing for him because it allows him to be able to diversify his reserves, which he doesn't have to hold solely dollars, aka petrodollars. And so he can also do business in yuan, being that they have a whole new system of payment that's developing out east. And now, he's getting involved with Russia. And so what's interesting is how, scroll down to the bottom here, it says Maduro's proposal is merely the latest not so vile hint at de-dollarizing the globe financial system by bypassing the dollar entirely and rearranging a new currency basket determined by the world's biggest oil producers and the largest importer. So he's saying that it's time for those who actually produce the most oil and those who import the most oil to have more of a say-so over what currency is being used. And of course, it won't be the United States government, or the dollar rather. It says Maduro also insisted that Venezuela is dealing with its debt to Russia, currently in the billions, and as Rosneft's deal with Venezuela state oil producer PDVSA is subject to negotiation. It says we fulfill all the obligations to Russia if we get more favorable terms for the restructuring of our debt. This will result in a deal between the two governments. So basically, he's saying he's going to work it out with Russia on something that's more favorable and getting that debt repaid. And then his last piece here just talks about how Russia and China may possibly look to forgive Venezuela because of the situation there. And so just want to take a minute and share with you what's going on in the news, what has transpired over the last week with the development or possible development of Russia getting involved if things are ramped up. So now this leads me to questions to ask you is, now that, Russia may possibly be in the equation, how do you think that may, steer the U.S. from having to outright invade or try to, go around some way or another by passing more sanctions or trying to get other countries surrounding Venezuela to begin, doing some type of transactions or deals that would hurt the Venezuelan economy as well, such as closing the borders or, recalling some of the Venezuelan debt as well to put more pressure on Maduro and his administration down there. So at the end of the day, none of this will turn out to be good for anyone because the Venezuelan people are still suffering. I read a report today that says inflation will probably be at about 2,300% by next year. And I couldn't even begin to imagine the idea of walking into a store with the biggest denomination note they have, which is, I think it's 20,000 Bolivar. And then say next week or the next day or the next week, especially next month, the price will have gone up, astronomically. So it's very hard pressed on the citizens there, but yet that's the situation they're in. And so it's important that those who are aware of it to shine some light on it, because the people of Venezuela at the end of the day are suffering as all these governments go back and forth over, what currency to use for oil, when at the end of the day, all these fiat currencies are not backed by much other than faith and confidence. And it's good to say that Venezuelan people have lost confidence in their currency. Now it's just a matter of time before other nations begin to wake up and realize that their national currencies are in the same boat. So other than that, I want to shine some light on today's news. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on how this will all play out. Will there be greater sanctions, or will Trump decide to just, test the waters and see if Putin will step into be the knight in shining armor for Venezuela as well? I would love to hear your thoughts. Enjoy your day.